Whether you're a Jew, a Buddhist, a Christian, at the heart of every single belief system, everyone has a nugget of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone just has different paths to get there. And I think if people would see the more inclusive nature, we could learn so much more from each other. And I feel that tarot is kind of like that sterile piece that ties everything together, but it's like that hidden truth in plain sight because it's the freakiness about it, that
Mm-hmm.
keeps people away from it. But I think if more people learned about what it's really about, aside from the sensationalized fortune teller, you're going to get married in 2 weeks type of stuff, they would see that it's a really valuable tool in your overall like healing, growth, and ascension.
For questions, comments, and to show your support, visit us on the web at afroempath.com. Test 1 2, test 1 2.
Hello.
Hey, peace, sister.
Oh, there we go. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Sounds lovely.
Oh, great. Wonderful.
So you come highly recommended by that sister Michelle.
Oh, do I?
Yeah, she's like, yeah, you gotta, she's singing your praises here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's funny. You guys kind of sound similar. You guys both have that kind of that southern charm.
We do. That's the thing we always laugh about
Mm-hmm.
whenever her and I are talking with another one of our friends.
Mm-hmm.
All three of us sound a lot alike to where when I'm listening, I'm like, this is hilarious.
Yeah. So, if you would, I want to know more about you as a person and kind of like your spiritual journey before this kind of career in terms of doing tarot. I guess professionally started. A little bit of background I have on you is that for Michelle is that you actually had a father who was a pastor, right?
Yes, he still is.
Gotcha.
Old Reverend man.
Yeah, and I know sometimes there can be conflicts between people of a traditional Christian mindset and people that are into the metaphysical and occult realms. So I want to kind of know more about that and how that played out, because I'm sure your story mirrors a lot of people's stories. So let's go into that if you would.
Well, my journey, I would say, actually started when I was 8, because when I was 8 is when I started having a reoccurring dream, and in the dream it was me opening up my bedroom door and there's like this glittery, sunshiny white staircase that was going straight up to the ceiling as if there was like a third floor of my house.
Mm-hmm.
And the first couple of times I had the dream, I was too scared to go up the staircase. And the last time I had the dream, I think I was probably about 10. And I went up the staircase and it was 3 bedrooms. Like first there's a closet. It had like all the little, girly girl pajama sets I wanted, and like the 3 different canopy beds in the 3 different rooms. So it was everything I could have ever wished for. And there was like a banister in the middle where I could look down into my house and I could see my dad in the kitchen and stuff like that. And there was like a doorknob that started talking. It's so weird. But it literally asked me like, how did you find out about this place? How'd you get here? I got creeped out, started banging it against the door. And then like this clock says, you can't, you might as well stop doing that because you're only going to hurt him. Right. And it's like, how did you find out about this place? And I got freaked out and like ran out of there. Right. Woke up. Never had the dream again, but all of my gifts like kicked in at that point.
At 10? At age 10?
Yeah. If they started at 8, I didn't understand what was happening. And I think it's because I was too scared to go up the staircase. But when I finally did, it's like all of my gifts kicked in at 10.
Mm-hmm.
So it started with me with dreams. And it was me somehow knowing things or having, relatives come to me before they passed away. Like standing at the foot of my bed, like, goodbye. And I'm like, bye. And, my dad be like, oh, your uncle passed. And I'm like, no, he didn't. He was in my room last night. And my dad's like, what? Right. So I didn't understand what was happening because I was raised Catholic and my dad was Baptist. He switched to Catholicism in order to marry my mom because that was the rule at the time. But ever since I was a kid, I was always very religious. And it's hard to explain, but it's the way that I put it in my, little kid mind was I was under the impression that I was like an angel that God maybe forgot. because I always felt apart from everyone else, but I could never find the verbiage for why that was. So of course I just took it as like a negative thing, right? So when my parents got divorced, that's when my dad went back to the church and he ended up becoming a pastor. And for me, I was always into metaphysics and things of the sort because I was always looking for answers. And that's why I ended up leaving the Catholic Church when I was like 12, after I got confirmed. And I ended up starting to visit a non-denominational church. And I remember they said like a personal relationship with Jesus. And I was like, a personal relationship? So I can just talk to Jesus? Okay, let's do that. Right? So that started my whole journey of like, Christianity. Was really, really into that. You fast forward all the way up into my adult years, and I wanted to be a minister, and I started studying to be a minister.
Hold on,
So,
can we back up a little bit? I want to.
oh, sure.
I want to. So for number one, for the way you said it, it's like, hey, I'm 10. I'm not feeling this. Let me go. Let me go to this church. I'm 12. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
how did that happen? Like, did your dad take you, or you just go by yourself? You drive your like your little tricycle over there. Like what is this? I'm like, damn, this girl's independent for a minute here now. So
Right.
how'd that happen?
No, it happened with my mom actually, because we were devout Catholics, but when my mom got divorced, her friend, a really good friend of hers, was telling her about her church, and my mom was kind of in that journey post divorce, like seeking, figuring yourself out, and it just made sense to her. So she wanted my brother and I to go in at first because, I just got confirmed as a Catholic. So that's like, a bar mitzvah for Catholic people, right? So I was like, my mom's going to hell. She's leaving the church. Like, that's how I was at first. But then like everything they were talking about, it just resonated with me. And I was like, dude, I want that, because in the Catholic religion, to me at the time, it felt very ritualistic. And ever since I was a child, it's like, my soul kept saying there's more to this. Now that sounds insane for like a little kid to think like that.
Oh, it's okay.
But I've always yearned for purpose and meaning, and like, what's this whole thing about? Like, there has to be more to this, because something inside of me was like saying there's more to this story. So I always like dug and dug and dug for more.
And so what did this new church, did this new church help you to like help your gifts or hurt your gifts?
It helped them.
And why?
Until I got indoctrinated.
Okay. So explain that.
Because it's like with Catholicism, I always say like, and then again, it's like, I live in a Catholic city. So I think in New Orleans, period, we're just lax about everything, right? So everybody that is in the Catholic Church is burning candles and, going to see, juju priestess and things of the sort. Like, that's just normal. We all know we do it. We just don't say it,
the hoodoo tradition and things like that, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of like incorporated into the Catholic Church because, historically, when we talk about, transatlantic slave trade and, the voodoo religion and everything being intermeshed with Catholicism. So because that's a culture here for us, like literally a way of life that just comes with the territory. So it's not weird. But in like a non-denominational or Baptist, like Protestant Christian church, like instantly that's demonic, that's evil, familiar spirits, stuff like that. So where it went from me having these dreams and these gifts, suddenly all of that became bad. So I suppressed them.
In the new church, you're saying?
Yeah, in the new church. So that's when it's like, I grew a lot in my biblical knowledge, but when it came to my gifts, it's like I was almost like ashamed of them because I my self-concept, I had a very poor self-concept, low self-esteem and stuff like that. So an authority figure saying like that's bad, it's like, I want to be a good girl. I really want to be good. So
let me ask you, like, how, like, you said these gifts started to solidify for you when you were 10. Like, who did you tell? Did you tell your parents? Did you tell like people in your church? Like, how did that happen? Like, bring me through that.
I never really told anyone. I would talk to my older brother about it because he has gifts, but it's like they're just starting to click to him. It's just like, dude, like, I dream about stuff and then it happens. And I'm like, oh, dude, come on. Right? So I would talk to him because him and I are like super duper close. and we still really didn't know what we were talking about. It's just like we were just kind of weirded out about it, but then like kind of scared because it's like, well, isn't that evil, you know?
Give me an
But
example.
none of
Give me an
my
example. What would happen though? Like, you know, you saw, obviously you saw some people that had passed, you know, but like, what else
seeing
happened?
people that passed or having dreams about like a conversation that like my grandparents and my mom were having that I wasn't there to know about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and then they're talking, and then I start like finishing the sentence, and then everyone is like, how did you know that? And then I pause and I'm like, oh, that's not a memory, I dreamed that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, don't mess with that. Or even with like my first tarot deck I got when I was 12 from a friend of mine, and I had Pokemon cards too. My mom found the Pokemon cards, not the tarot deck, and she
Mm-hmm.
like burned them and said that they were evil and demonic and things of the sort. So it's like a lot of it I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, so it was very unprocessed. It's like this stuff was happening, I didn't know what it was called or what it was or what like intuition was. Like I didn't have the verbiage at all. I was just like, okay, I'm weird and I'm strange and I might be a little crazy, so I'm just not gonna tell anyone. So it was never anything that was like, you know, someone being able to kind of feed into that. It was a great deal of me just holding it inside myself because I really didn't understand what it was and just defaulted it into the wrong bad category.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm feeling all of that. Boy, this story, I'm sure you've heard this, like people with similar stories, you know, like, because
Mm-hmm.
this like Michelle's story is kind of similar to this, but she
Mm-hmm.
ended up telling people about it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
um
that's a big struggle.
yeah.
It's a big struggle. It like, and I think that's where I empathize with her a lot because I wasn't vocal with it to where I could receive like open rejection. And I think that's something her and I discuss a lot, is just how much that impacted her of opening up
Mm-hmm.
and being rejected. And it's like with me, I was more or less dismissed. It's like, it's just like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, or oh, you know, that was more or less the thing.
Okay. So out of curiosity, like you said, you were 12 and you got a first tarot deck. I mean,
Hmm.
that seems, I mean, a bit. I mean, to me, I don't know. I don't do tarot at all. But I'm like, you're 12. Like when I was 12, you know, I'd probably be playing, you know, doing the Pokemon, just Pokemon,
Yeah.
not Pokemon and tarot. So like, how were you introduced? You introduced by a friend? Like, how did that happen?
Oh yeah, by a friend.
So explain
Because
that.
I was a skateboarder
Okay.
and I was into like goth culture.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of heavy metal, spikes around my neck, anarchy signs on my backpack and things of the sort. So that was like the whole culture with that. And it's like I was introduced to it. And it's like my friend who had them, like she didn't understand them. I didn't understand them, but it was something about them I found intriguing. But I couldn't put my finger on what it was. It's like, it's something about this where I'm just like, this is the jam, you know? But I didn't, and you know, at the time, because it was a Rider Waite deck, and the Rider Waite decks, now they come like with little booklets, and you know, there's like tons of books that tell you about like what the meaning of the cards are.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like with this one, it was just a deck. So it's like I didn't know what it was or how it worked or you know what anything was. But I know when my mom burned my my Pokemon cards, I gave it back to my friend. And whenever I would go to her house, it's like, you know, we would just tinker with it, but we literally had no clue what we were doing. But I just knew it was something, some connection I felt to it. I was like, I don't know why. It's like, I feel like they're supposed to be in my life. Right.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. But after that, it's like it was just super Christianity for me because I always battled with that good and evil thing. And I viewed myself as bad,
Mm-hmm.
inherently bad. And I needed something, I guess you would say, like legalistic, so to speak, to give me like a pathway to walk. But in my teenage years, it's like I completely fell off, of course, you know, going to college. Well, prior to that, actually, which is the funny part, I wanted to be a nun because I stepped back to Catholicism like 11th grade because I went to Catholic school my whole life. Like
Mm-hmm.
from the time we moved here from Texas, so like from what, second grade all the way up until my senior year of high school, I was in Catholic school. So then I got really serious about religion again, and I was considering becoming a nun, and I was looking at convents and everything. My senior
Why?
year.
Like why? That's a huge
Oh yeah.
that's a huge commitment. Like why what is it about you that like drew you? Because you know a lot of people, you know, when they're getting into this as a young child, you know, or
Hmm.
like they're like kind of in it kicking and screaming. What would make you want to devote your life to at an early age? You know what I'm saying?
Because it felt so right. It's like when they came and talked to us about, because it was like a little program they had at school, and they had the different nuns that were talking. And when I thought about how I felt spiritually, and like, just my connection with wanting to know, or like the fact that religion was my favorite class of all things,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, maybe that's what it is. I said, maybe I'm feeling the call,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they teach like when you're feeling the call, and like with the characteristics of people who are called to go into clergy. And I was showing all of those signs. It's like a desire for God, a desire to know about spiritual texts. And I was like, well, that makes sense. I was like, well, maybe I'm supposed to be a nun.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And the more I found out about it, I was like, I think this is it. This is the path I'm supposed to go. So it was just me. Like, I think my senior class had 83 girls that were graduating, because I went to an all-girl school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only me and one other girl who felt that we were being called. And the reason why I didn't go into the convent is because, and that's something the church is still suffering with now, is that a lot of girls would go in after high school, and they would end up leaving probably within the first year or two.
Mm-hmm.
So they told me to go to college the first year. They're like, go to college, experience college. If you still feel the call, then come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. So, graduated, and I went to college, and I was like, oh, this is life? Okay, bump that. And after that, it's like I just like completely went bananas. My mom was so confused. It's like, how did you go from being this person to this person? Because it's like as soon as I got freedom, it's like I became a totally different person, and just wanted to experience like life to the absolute fullest. So there was like no church, no spirituality, no prayer, just lots of alcohol and lots of drugs.
Mm-hmm.
That became my life in the 18 to like 20-year-old range.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't find my way back until I actually became a mom. And because it's the way that my life was, and I realized a lot of the stuff I was doing was because it was a lot of unprocessed pain that I had, and a lot of low self-esteem, and just trying to find meaning. And I more or less was like self-abusing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, oh, that's funny. When I was 19, that's when stuff really got crazy. When I was 19, I was going to commit suicide. And
Why so?
I literally made a deal with God. I was like, either you tell me my purpose, or I'm going to kill myself tomorrow. Literally. And I was so serious,
Mm-hmm.
because I've always talked to God like that. And you could say serendipity. My mom went to talk to a pastor, because she was really concerned about me, because my depression was so bad at that time. And she went to talk to a pastor and was telling him like about me, and he gave my mom a vial of like holy water, and he told her to go home, to give me the holy water, to have me drink it, put it on a scripture in the book of Matthew, close my Bible, put it under my pillow, and I would have a dream that night, right? Now, ironically, it was like, you're going to tell me my purpose, or I'm going to kill myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my mom comes home, she gives me the stuff, tells me what to do. And I was like, all right, buddy. I was like, this is your last chance. Better have a dream tonight. I'm just saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I drink the water, put it on the scripture, put it under my pillow. And literally, as soon as I put my head down on the pillow, it's like instantaneously I fall asleep, and I wake up in the dream. And I'm sitting on this, it's like a baseball field, and I'm sitting on like bleachers. And if you're facing the bleachers, I'm like in the top left-hand corner, and I'm surrounded, like the whole bleachers were filled with people, and everyone's looking at the game. But suddenly, in unison, all of the people sitting around me turned at the same time and looked at me, and their faces suddenly went contorted. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Ring.
Uh, I don't think so, but
It's a horror movie.
okay.
In the movie, when they encounter like the main scary person, their
Mhm.
faces get contorted in this way. And that's the only thing that exists that could describe how these people's faces look. Like they're literally pulling at their skin and groaning, and they're all looking at me and they're saying, please help us, please help us. And I'm looking at them like, what you want me to do? I can't help you.
Mhm.
Right? Like I
Mhm.
have nothing to help y'all. And I looked down and the little vial of holy water that I had drank was in my hand, but it was filled. So the first thing that comes to my mind was, okay, let's just put crosses on their foreheads. What the priest does, let's go with that, right?
Mhm.
So I put crosses on their foreheads, and the moment that I do that, and now I know where I was putting crosses at is like where their third eye is.
Mhm.
So with each person, as soon as I would do that, they were instantaneously healed. As soon as I would touch them, they were healed. And when I got to the last person, I put the cross on them, and then I looked down and it was empty. And I said, God, I was like, I've helped all of these people and now I don't have any left to help myself. And then I started self-loathing. I'm like, this is my life. I'm always helping people. No one helps Princess, right?
Mhm.
But in that second, the vial automatically like fills itself back up with oil. So I take the oil, I anoint my arms. I jumped off the bleachers and my first thought was, I need to help more people. So I took off running and I go to the back of the school, and all my friends I used to skateboard with were like standing underneath this tree in nun and priest clothes. And I was like, how on earth are y'all nuns and priests? Right?
Mhm.
And I'm sitting in this little desk, and suddenly they all turn in unison looking behind me. And I slowly turn around, and as far as my eyes could see, there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people lining up behind me. And like they were waiting on me to do something. And I'm like, okay. So I woke up. Never knew what that dream meant, but it was enough to keep me pushing, right? And that's like what led me up into having my son. And that was like the nail in the coffin, where I was just like, I have a human that I'm responsible for taking care of. And I was like, I can't be that much of a screw up if I created something that's perfect. So I was like, no matter what it takes, I was like, I need to do something to get out of this funk. And that was like that last kick in the butt that I needed to start like developing myself. So that's when I started doing self-exploration and taking psychology quizzes and, like researching things to try to figure myself out and why, I did the things I did, or what my gifts were, what were they about, what were the meanings for these things. And that ultimately, turned into a career and led me to where I am now.
That's a good story.
Oh yeah, man.
That's a good
It's
story.
real.
I enjoyed
It's
that. I
real.
enjoyed that thoroughly. Oh man.
Oh
So,
yeah.
I'm not sure where to go from there, but so let me ask you this: how did you get back into tarot then? You know what I'm trying to say? Like
I
from
broke up
there.
with God.
What?
Yeah, I broke up with God. It's a funny story. Like all of this, I, went to
Hmm.
college, finishing because I flunked out of college first go around.
Hmm.
But when I went back as a non-traditional student, I finished my degree in 3 years, graduated at the top of my
This is
class.
after the dream.
Yeah, oh,
Okay,
way
gotcha.
after the dream. This
Gotcha.
is when I was like late 20s.
Gotcha.
I finished undergrad and I was gonna go straight into Bible college. And my dad was like, I understand you really want to be a minister, but he's like, I really don't want you to go to Bible college. He's like, I really think that you should, go get your master's. You can always do that later. Now, coming from my dad, that's strange,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So, and then in between that time, it's like I ended up getting married, and I was in an extremely abusive marriage. And that to me was like the igniting factor, was the fact of being with someone who's mentally abusive. It's like they tear you down so much and try to deny your reality
Hmm.
that if you have no sense of self, there's nothing to fight back. And the only thing that I had that helped me fight back in that situation is that same little voice that always talked to me that kept saying, Princess, something's not right here. That's not right. This isn't right. And when I started listening to it, it's the more that it started showing me what was happening. So, and of course, my ex-husband is also a pastor, right? So throughout that process, it's me digging into the Bible to make sense of the things that he was saying, because it was more or less, we can say emotional and mental abuse, but it really had crossed the line into spiritual abuse, because, you know, the thing most important to me, God, the Bible, was being used against me.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, a scripture that you know, but if a person says it differently, it's like, well, it does say that, but it's like, that doesn't feel right within me, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, I ended up leaving that marriage and infused myself into church, became very, very successful in the church arena. I was a church consultant, so I worked with like mega churches, like, you know, building programs and marketing, branding, all that good stuff. But the more I got into it, the more that I started seeing this is not right. It's like something is wrong here. But it's, again, it's like everything looks okay, but something inside of me is saying something is wrong. And then I start questioning scripture, which was very rare for me. And I was just like, man, because I'm like, I studied Buddhism before, and I'm like, dude, it's certain things that just aren't adding up here. And I'm like, I'm thinking about what I know unconditional love to be. And I'm seeing how people respond to each other. And I'm like, this isn't in alignment. And it's like, how is this possible? So it's almost as if something that you blindly just follow, for the first time, I was able to step outside of it and to look at it as a whole, and saw that there were so many pieces that didn't mix, but I just went along with it.
You're saying the whole church culture, you mean?
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
Christianity in general, the Bible and everything. It's like, because a lot of things just contradict themselves. And being someone who was studying like the Hebrew, Aramaic, you know, Greek translations of things, owned 8 different, you know, translations of the Bible. Like, I literally studied the Bible from like a doctrine perspective, a metaphysical perspective, all of that. And to see that there were things that weren't adding up, it's like, this doesn't make sense. And then even the same thing with my gifts, even with tarot cards, that's where it came back. Like, tarot cards came back while I was in church. I even asked my pastor about it, and he was just like, I can't lie, it do make sense. I was like, right? This is what I'm saying.
Give me an example. I want to hear that conversation.
It was an oracle deck. It was called, what is it? The Life Coaching, the Life Purpose Tarot Oracle, or something along the lines, but it's an app. And whenever I'd be reading a scripture and didn't understand, I just, you know, tinkering with it, like secretly, I'd go to that app and just like randomly pick a card, like asking spirit, like, well, what does that mean? And I'd pick a card, and somehow the card would always like give me the part I was missing. And I was like, how is this possible? Right? So when I asked him about it, he was like looking through the cards, and I think he came up to the Dark Night of the Soul card. And he was like reading what the Dark Night of the Soul, he's like, that's what that's called? He's like, that's like what Elijah went through. I didn't know that was called that. And so me and him were just like, it makes so much sense. But we're not supposed to mess with that though. But it makes sense. Like, that's literally how the conversation went. And I was like, well, why is it that this works and it's not supposed to? Because I was like, we could say that it's a familiar spirit, quote unquote.
What does that mean, the familiar spirit? I don't even know what that means. I'm not from a background of Christianity, but I do study it esoterically.
Yeah. A familiar spirit would be a demonic spirit, because all spirits outside of the body know everything. So this would be a lower vibrational spirit that would come to people who have psychic gifts, do tarot, mediums, or what have you. And it's like spirits of demons or spirits of people who died that weren't in Christ, that are telling you information that they know just from not being in a body. So it's not actually the Holy Spirit or Jesus or God talking to you. It's a familiar spirit.
People trying to mislead you from your path to God in Christ. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha.
But the thing I said that's weird is, like, I said, well, if that's the case, how is it that they're helping me understand scripture though? And that's kind of where
the tarot cards and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
So that's the thing we were torn on. So that kind of just built up, and I started realizing that I was denying myself, I was denying my gifts, and I said, I feel so drawn to this. Even when I started looking at the metaphysical interpretations of scripture, And I started seeing, I was like, dude, that's why the Bible doesn't make sense, because I don't think we're supposed to be taking it literally.
Yeah, yeah.
So it came to all of that, and it got to a point where I felt so much unrest, where in the epiphany I had literally was this. I said, God, I said, the only reason why people believe in you is because they don't want to go to hell. And I said, if you only want true believers to go to heaven, I was like, if they were to find out they wouldn't go to hell if they didn't believe in you, I said, all churches everywhere would be empty. Because I said, no one would do this. No one would self-deny to this extent, because you're literally walking a tightrope. And it's like, you already have this knock against you because you're a sinful human. I'm inherently evil and I'm bad. Everything that I think and do is wrong. But you want me to align with perfection when I already have so much against me, right? And if I don't do it, then I can end up going to hell. I can get saved, but I can lose my salvation and still go to hell. So there's no telling, right? And I was like, the God that I know is not like that. I said, it couldn't possibly be like that. So I decided to break up with God. So I literally said, I left my church, and I literally said to God one night, I said, look, I said, if I have to go to hell for this, then I deserve to go there. But I said, I can't keep living my life like this, because I said, there's so much of me I feel like I'm denying. I feel so out of alignment, because I said, it's so many things that make sense outside of Christianity. And I said, and everything that Christianity has ever promised me, it's never come to pass. It's like I've been under the illusion that it has. But the only thing that has made me is prideful and judgmental, looking down on people. Oh, they don't know Christ. I'm not talking to them. Oh, I don't want those type of people away around me. It's like they don't know Christ. It's like a very haughty spirit. And I started to see, which I ultimately wrote a book about, called The Christ Identity Crisis. And it's about how a lot of people with low self-esteem will go into the Christian church and hide behind the personification of Christ, and end up acting almost in a narcissistic way by demeaning other people or shutting people down by using Christ as like the big brother that's like, hey, you know, Jesus said it, not me. Yep. You're a sinner, you're going to hell. I didn't say that, Jesus did. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So all of that was just negativity. So I felt like I had to break up with God in order to find my truth. But that was literally the most important part of my journey and what led me to where I am now, because it was almost a roundabout. It's like I left to find myself, but it's like I broke up with God just to find, and I use the term God, but all spirit, whatever you want to call it. But it's like I broke up with who I thought God was, is what I know now looking back. Because it's what I lived my life under the authority of. That was not the all. That was man's creation of God. And what I know now to be the difference between spirituality and religion is the fact that religion is man's way to God, and spirituality is God's way to man. Which is realizing that there really never, ever was a separation. Right? It's just that what keeps us from growing in a religious or dogmatic mindset is the thought that who God is or who spirit is some entity out there somewhere. You know, like the absentee landlord, so to speak. And not seeing that connection of we are one and the same. There's only one of us, right? So that's what that whole journey ended up teaching me. And it started with tarot as a personal development tool for me. And because I didn't learn it from, you know, like the occult perspective, it's kind of like I picked them up and I just knew what it was. It's like I looked at a card and I'm like, that's what that is. Never looked at the book.
How'd you know?
I don't know. I just knew. It's like everything I think I had ever studied. It's like I look at the tarot like the Bible on fleek. It's like every religion, every universal law, from numerology to astrology, all of that is within every single card, within all 78, on top of speaking about it in like a 12 ray sense, like, you know, spiritual or personal ascension and consciousness, Maslow's hierarchy needs, however you want to, you know, frame it. But it's like that whole personal development journey and self-mastery is in essence what the whole system of tarot is. It's not so much about fortune telling. You can use it for that, but it's like my perception on what it is and how I came into it was so much different than just simply fortune telling. It's like I saw the answers to a lot of things I spent my life seeking in those cards. And almost every story that I encountered from different cultures or different religious backgrounds, I would see elements of those. And it really goes back to, of course, psychology. We think about Carl Jung, and archetypes. It's those things that are seared into our consciousness that we just know regardless of what language we speak. It's that connecting essence of how we can see, you know, a stop sign and know it just means stop. Even if a kid doesn't know how to read, it's like that means stop. Because it's just one of those things that's seared into our subconscious, you know, or why we naturally have an aversion to snakes or spiders. It's just those natural instinctual things. And those are the things I feel like, despite what language it's spoken in, it's like they transcend time, because it's that connecting factor in all of us that recognize the symbolism. So with me using it as a personal development tool, it became like a mirror to me. So it's more or less what I see in these cards is what it is my conscious mind or my ego won't allow me to admit to myself. So me learning it that way, like more or less from an intuitive, historical type of perspective, is what kind of helped me where I read differently. Because when I learned those traditional meanings, it just added to how, you know, I already was reading them from more of an intuitive, I guess, you know, organic intellectual standpoint, and incorporating those traditional meanings. It just changes the way that I read. And I never thought that was a big deal, because I just assumed everybody read tarot that way. And my friends, you know, would always come to me for readings. I always did readings for people in my real life, but I never really, you know, considered doing anything with it. And my friends were like, dude, you need to start a channel. And I'm like, for what? I was like, ain't nobody gonna watch that stuff. And I started on Instagram because I was in the spiritual closet and no one really knew what I was doing since leaving the church. I started on Instagram to kind of get my feet wet. And I got a whole bunch of people from my church and stuff that unfollowed me and whatnot. And that ultimately gave me the confidence to just step out and do the YouTube channel. And like from the moment that I started it, it just grew, which still perplexes me to this day. I think it's just like, whoa, this is really doing its own thing. Like, it's okay. That's what's up, you know? Usually I think every other YouTube channel I've had prior to, when I was like in marketing and stuff, it's like, hey, subscribe to my channel. It's like, nah, I ain't even gotta say it.
Yeah. Because people are looking, you know, so.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And then it's like the fact of what I'm there for. It's like, it's a connecting medium, because I know there's people in the world that are suffering and struggling the same way that I did for so many years. And you'll be up at 3 a.m., you know, searching just for anything that speaks to you. And I always go into every reading that I do feeling as if it's an honor just to be able to say something that may speak to someone's soul. It's like I never want to sensationalize any of those things. It's not even about being entertaining. I think that's a perk to be entertaining. But my main thing is, it's like I want to speak to a person who's hopeless, who is creeped out by the fact that they came across this video at 3 a.m. and this person is somehow saying verbatim what it is that I've gone through, and this is actually giving me hope. That's like my goal with every single video that I do.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So let me ask you this, like, can anybody do tarot? Or like, cause I know, see, you have gifts, you know what I'm saying? So like I'm assuming like, you know, this channel is called Afro-Empath Ascension. So like when we say empath, I'm pretty sure that's like, Clairaudient, I'm pretty sure. And then, but there's also other clairs. So like Clairaudient, that's when you hear I'm not sure what you like. You hear voices in your head, or a spirit talks to you, right?
That's so funny. I laugh about clairaudience
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, with me being a therapist, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, we got to talk about this clairaudience thing now. With clairaudience, it's not necessarily in your head. The best way that I could describe it is it's a declarative sentence that rises up somewhere around your sacral and solar plexus that just comes up. But if ever you hear a voice that's audible, like someone outside of you yelling at you, I'm like, that's, hallucinations, auditory hallucinations. So I
Okay, so
always
you're.
say that as a disclaimer.
Oh, okay. I'm happy to hear that. Now, see, I don't have that Claire. You know what I'm trying to say? So I never really
Uh-huh.
understood what that was, how that
Yeah.
worked. You know what I'm trying to say? So you're saying it actually
Yeah.
comes up as a gut feeling that wants to express itself through you.
Uh-huh. And it's like a whisper inside of you. But
Gotcha.
it's never a question. It's always going to be like, it won't be, should I go to the store? It'll be, go to the store. And the voice sounds very sure, like, don't trust them. Stop talking now. That's how that voice sounds from within. But
Gotcha.
it's like a faint whisper.
Is it your voice, or is it like a distinctly not your voice? You know what I'm trying to say?
It varies. Sometimes, because I know, like, when spirit speaks to me, like when I'm doing readings, totally different than my voice. Totally different. But it's almost as if it doesn't have a sound. It's almost as if you would think of like a wisp of air of smoke, and it like took the formation of a word.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it sounds like that, which sounds crazy,
No, I get
but
it.
that's literally what it sounds like. But it doesn't sound like you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's reminiscent, I would say, of yourself, but it's very distinctly different.
This is a strange question, but does it have a sex or a gender? You know what I'm saying? Is it a male or a female voice, or does it change or vary? How does that work?
Mm-mm. I think with me, like with guides,
Mm-hmm.
because some people work with like guides and stuff. With
Mm-hmm.
their guides, they can discern male and female voices. But it's like for me, it's like a genderless voice.
Gotcha.
It doesn't have any tone. But with some people, it does vary though.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a gift that you have. I'm saying, like,
Hmm.
is that like a prerequisite? Would you say to being able to do tarot effectively?
No, I wouldn't say so, because there I'm what are all of the words for it? Clairaudient, I'm
Mm-hmm.
clairvoyant, I'm claircognizant, and clairsentient. But I don't think that one or all of them per se are a prerequisite, because each one of us, because I think my clairvoyance is what completely shatters everything else. It's like I see signs, symbols, and dream more than anything else. And when I'm not seeing it visually, because sometimes spirit will show me symbols and I'm like, I don't even understand what you're showing me right now. That's when my clairaudience will kick in. It is like, that's that. And I'm like, oh, all right. But I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think having at least one of the clairs would be helpful. But in the bigger scheme of things, I honestly think someone could memorize all 78 cards and their meanings in different situations and still read tarot. I don't even think you really would need to be spiritually gifted to do it, to be quite honest. Even though I really don't believe that there's anyone who's not in one way or the other. But I don't necessarily think it's a prerequisite to be an intuitive tarot reader now. That's different. Like, I think to get what intuitive readers get from readings, as opposed to Four of Pentacles, that's a hoarding energy. You need to kind of release control instead of getting like readings like that. Like the stuff that we get, that we see, that aren't on the cards, they wouldn't be able to do that, but they could give a general reading just from knowing the meanings of the cards as possible.
Gotcha. So like in I guess in my show, my podcast, I speak a lot about alchemy and the seven hermetic principles and things like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, how could you relate? How could you relate like tarot? Does it relate to any kind of systems? Like maybe like the Kabbalah or the
Oh
hermetic
yeah.
principles, or like how could you make it like understandable for me, because I'm a complete novice in it.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, the alchemy card in the tarot is the temperance card. That card speaks of spiritual alchemy. But the easiest way I would say to relate it would be just looking at the major arcana, which are like they call them the trump cards, and those cards go from 0 all the way up to 21. That's the story of the fool's journey or the hero's journey that you hear about in literature. So you think about like King Arthur and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like the person with the humble beginnings, they don't know their truth, and they go on this journey, and you know all that stuff. Then they end up finding their truth. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the whole major arcana.
Okay, and so that the whole King Arthur story, you know, just for people that don't know it, basically, as far as I knew, it's kind of like the story of the alchemist in terms of like
Yeah,
they say the philosopher's stone is really the
yeah,
pineal gland, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's exactly what it is. So it's the whole ascent and into higher consciousness, or what I call the golden aura.
Hmm.
The higher level of golden consciousness, so to speak. The,
Hmm.
you know, full on unconditional love, high vibrational living, so to speak. And realizing that it, like the story of the alchemist, it's like we spend our lives trying to fill the hole with a W in our soul. And ultimately, one day we awaken to realize that we were trying to fix something that was never broken. And we were looking everywhere but inside of ourselves, because the guru we have always sought looks out of our own eyes. So in essence, that's what the whole journey of the major arcana is all about, is the fool coming to that realization that I am everything
Hmm.
already. But I had to, you know, with each major arcana they go into, they descend down into the 4 different elements, which is representative of, you know, your thought areas with the swords, with 3D life, which is the pentacles, the cups are your emotional world, and then with the wands, that's like your spiritual world or your drive. So they're mastering each suit, and once they get to like mastery level of, like, say, you know, my passion, my drive, my self-directed energy, or my life force energy, once I master that, then I can go over to the cups. But of course, we know life is not that linear.
Hmm.
So you're typically bouncing between like your willpower to your emotions. And then now I'm learning a lesson on how to use the power of my mind. And then I'm dropping back down into how the universal laws manifest themselves in 3D. So it's kind of bouncing in between them and mastering different elements on the way. And as you master one level, you're able to move up the major arcana. But the whole purpose of it, in essence, is the temperance card, which is alchemy, which is that balance between the 2 extremes, and or the middle road, if you will.
Mm. Wow. That, like, thank you for that, because I had no idea it was like that. That's really cool, and now it makes it more personable to me now. If I
Oh yeah,
yeah, if I ever, you know, see you reading anything like that, you know, so that's awesome.
a lot of secrets hidden in those cards.
Yeah. Wow. So, like, you had a journey, you know, coming from the church or different churches. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
How did tarot help you come full circle into a different, you know, understanding of God, and how is, like, where would you say you're at now in terms of like your own process of alchemy? You know, if you were to read yourself.
Oh man, I think we're always evolving,
Mm.
first and foremost. I think for me it's I'm learning to, how could I put it? To uh I don't even know how I would put that into words. Where I'm at right now is like accepting how other people see me. Put
Hmm.
it that way.
Yeah.
Because I see myself as like a regular human being.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I feel like anything that I'm doing, I'm like, everybody can do what I'm doing,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
But it's encountering different people, and even the emails that I get about people who have experienced true change. I mean, it's some people who were on the brink of suicide
Hmm.
who found my channel, and it's like, you know, the things that you said have given me hope to keep going. And it's reconciling that of like, wow, like, now granted, this is always the type of impact I've wanted to have on people,
Hmm.
but it's my friends say that I'm too humble. That's how they describe it. So it's like, for me, I'm just like, oh, I'm just a person, like, I just do stuff, and it's kind of coming to the place to where I'm accepting, like, wow, like, you really have a platform and people are really being helped and changed by this. And I think I'm still in that part of kind of kicking out that residual self-doubt to say, like, yeah, I do that, and being proud of it. That's where I feel like I'm at in my process.
Have you forgiven yourself from, for your, your kind of wilding out type years and things like that?
Oh yeah, man. Because I feel like that's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I looked at that as like a hiccup, and it wasn't a hiccup.
Yeah.
It's like, me going through all of that was so absolutely necessary. And that's where another one of my main messages to people is to go easy on yourself, because I see now, looking back, and to tie that into where tarot kind of plays that role, is tarot makes every single sidestep, quote unquote, that I thought that I made make perfect sense. Mm-hmm. I see now, looking back, that I was never off of the path. Mm-hmm. It seemed that way because of external expectations, or, as I say, should, oughts, and supposed tos. Mm-hmm. Whenever a person finds themselves saying, I should, or I ought to do that, or I'm supposed to do that, that's an external authority outside of yourself whose expectations you're trying to live up to. Mm-hmm. And all of us as autonomous beings, we have the right and the ability to self-govern, right? Mm-hmm. We don't need a person outside of ourselves to tell us those things. So I see that all of those times I'm like, oh, I'm doing bad because I should be doing this, da-da-da-da. I see now that was all a part of the journey. And had I not taken that quote unquote sidestep, I wouldn't know the things that I know now. I wouldn't be able to look at them with fresh eyes and see the gifts of wisdom that were hidden in those situations. And it can help me moving forward with decisions that I'm making, or how I engage with people. And even those people that cross my path, being able to offer them wisdom from, those quote unquote sidestep experiences. So with tarot, it's made it all come full circle. It's like, I see now that everyone is correct, and that another person does not need to be wrong in order for me to be right. Right? Gotcha. A lot of times when we think about right and wrong, it's like, in order for me to be right, I need you to be wrong so I can be right. And I see now that that's unnecessary. We can both be right in our own respect. You know what I mean? And we're all following the right path. We're all following the same truth, whether you're a Jew, a Buddhist, a Christian, because at the heart of every single, belief system, everyone has a nugget of the truth. Mm-hmm. Everyone just has different paths to get there. And I think if, people would see the more inclusive nature, we could learn so much more from each other. And I feel that tarot is kind of like that sterile piece that ties everything together, but it's like that hidden truth in plain sight, because it's the, the freakiness about it, that mm-hmm. keeps people away from it. But I think if more people learned about what it's really about, aside from the sensationalized fortune teller, you're going to get married in 2 weeks type of stuff, they would see that it's a really valuable tool in your overall like healing, growth, and ascension.
Gotcha. But also, I'm assuming if you look at it that way, in terms of what you just said, like mm-hmm. taking responsibility for where you're at, I'm trying to say in that, because alchemy is about doing inner work, on the self, and like. I think sometimes people like they're constantly seeking outside themselves, and they can use mm-hmm. like tarot readers almost like a religion in itself. If that makes any sense, you know what I'm trying to say?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you 110%.
Because I meet some sisters like all they do is listen to tarot readings. And I'm like, I mean, I listen to tarot readings too sometimes, especially uh-huh. when you're going through something, you're like, man, like I just don't know. But like I realize that like when I'm feeling like good, I'm not say good, but when I'm feeling centered and I'm feeling in control, a lot of times I don't feel the need to, if that makes any sense. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
So it's like I say,
happy people don't watch tarot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the point. I'm trying to say, like, I'm glad you said that, like, because mm-hmm. I think if people were to look at it, as a tool to see how they're doing in their own alchemical process.
Oh yeah.
And what they need to do internally through meditation and mindfulness and things like that,
Absolutely.
Then like, it's really about, alchemy is really about responsibility, for yourself, because you are God experiencing yourself,
Yeah. And
So
that's what I feel sets my channel apart, is
yeah.
because I don't play that. It's like I'm not into blaming other people or
Mhm.
like, oh, how could they do that to you? It's like, nah. One thing that I think everyone subscribed to me loves about me is
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna call you out.
Mhm.
I'm gonna read these cards the way that I would read them for myself.
Mhm.
And seeing like, wow, this devil card is coming up right next to this card. That's looking like codependency.
Mhm.
What areas in your life are you codependent? You're just leaving out of a relationship and you're thinking about going into another one and have yet to master what it is that drew you to that last person in the first place. Last thing you need to think about is dating. You need to be thinking about, how did I get into this position in the first place? And that's where I say it's like, it's fun because I understand in so many ways. It's very entertaining. I
Mhm.
can't lie, you know? Or
Yeah.
even if you cross watch and you're finding out about another person, it's like, you know. So we all have that little,
You said do
part
what?
in us.
Crosswalk? What is that?
Oh, cross watch, that's a term, a YouTube tarot term. Cross watching is when you're watching a video to get information on another person. So, like, say if I have, a guy I'm dating who's a Scorpio, I'm going to go watch Scorpio's video when I don't have Scorpio in my chart because I'm trying to figure out what's going on with him in his life,
Mhm. Okay.
you know?
Mhm.
So that's something a lot of people do. But the whole thing that I say that's most important is, even though we're having fun, even though we can laugh and joke, it's always bringing it back to the self,
Yeah.
bringing your power back to you,
Mhm.
and seeing what you can do to better your life.
Gotcha. That sounds like a good place to kind of close up. But boy, oh man, obviously I could like talk to you for like hours and ask you so many things. Like, let me ask you this: like, where can people find you?
Okay, I have my YouTube channel, which is She Do Soulology,
Hmm.
and I have my Instagram, that's She Do Soul. On Facebook, I'm She Do Tarot, and on Twitter, I'm Woke Bestie.
Nice, nice, sister. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, sister. Take care.
You too.
All right, peace.
Bye bye.